All right. Okay. So let's talk about the UK. So Nanika, can you just stop the recording a second because there's an issue? Okay, so as I said, guys, I'm going to be talking about the UK. I just wanted to clarify that when we're talking about the UK, we're talking about England, we're talking about Scotland, and we're talking about Northern Ireland, but not Ireland itself. That is not part of the United Kingdom. So how do the Brits like it? So what are they looking for when you apply? All of the universities in the UK, when your student or your child or you are applying there, you kind of need to know what it is that you want to study. When you are applying for your undergraduate program, you will have to apply for the major itself. So if you're studying law, you apply for law. You want to do English and history, you're applying for English and history. Similarly, with the engineering, either you do general engineering or you do chemical engineering, mechanical engineering, depending on whatever you prefer. But what that means is that there is no flexibility to change once you have made that decision and enrolled at the university. So if you decide, or if the student decides 3 months in that they're not enjoying this field of study as much as they thought they would, the only way to make a change is actually to drop out and reapply the next year. So that is something to keep in mind. Overall, undergraduate degrees are maximum of 3 years. In some cases, they may be 4 years, especially in Scotland. A lot of the undergraduate degrees there tend to be 4 years versus anywhere else in the UK, they're 3 years. Medicine and veterinary science, those can be 5 to 6 years long. In the UK, there is an application platform called UCAS, which only allows you to apply to a total of 5 universities. So that is the maximum number of colleges that you can apply to. However, if you're applying for medicine or, again, veterinary science or dentistry, you can only apply to 4 for that subject, but you can add a 5th choice as well, but that would have to be in a different field of study. So, for example, if you are studying dentistry, you apply to 4 universities where you choose dentistry as your option, but the 5th one can be something different or similarly related, such as biomedical sciences. And that can be the student's backup choice in case they don't get any admits into dentistry and they want to continue studying and then reapply eventually. Okay, another very important thing about the UK applications is that it is very dependent on your academic performance. So what the universities will look at is they will look at how the student has done in 10th grade, their academic performance, how they've performed in 11th grade, but most importantly, what their predicted grades are. The predicted grades are something that the school counselor will be submitting to UCAS, which in most cases and generally should be the case, students will not know what the predicted grades are, as this goes directly from your school to the university that you apply to. Are there any questions so far? Okay, so some key
I have a question, sorry.
Yes.
The final admission is based on the final scores, final percentage, is that right?
So I will come to that, but yes.
No,
so
the reason...
Yeah, of course. No, so you have your, each university has minimum entry requirements, okay? Only if you're meeting those minimum entry requirements should you be applying to that university, all right? If you apply and you have met the threshold that the university presents, and they say, for example, if a student is doing IB, they say, we want you to get 37 points in your IB with the 766 in your higher levels, then that is the conditional offer that is attached to their decision, right? Now, if the student meets that offer or exceeds it, then the offer counts. But if they do not meet that 37 with 766 and higher level, then the university has the right to rescind the offer.
Understood, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a maximum of 5 universities, as I mentioned, unless you're applying for the following courses. Between Oxford and Cambridge, it's important to know that you can only apply to one. Either you apply to Oxford or you apply to Cambridge. You cannot apply to both. The application cost for UCAS is approximately 3,000 rupees when you submit the application. So some important dates: in May, the UCAS application form opens up, but you can only start submitting after the 5th of September. There is an early application deadline, again, for Oxford or Cambridge, medicine, dentistry, and veterinary medicine, which is the 16th of October. So it's not, the general regular deadline is actually the 31st of January, but for these subjects, the application needs to be submitted by the 16th. So that is something all students should keep in mind. Did someone say something? No. Once the applications have been submitted, the decisions do come out on a rolling basis, which is generally university dependent. So in most cases, we do tell students it is beneficial. The earlier you apply, the earlier you're likely to hear back from the university, and the better chance you stand at actually getting an offer from that university. Okay, so when it comes to choosing the right course in the right university, so choosing the right course, it is very important for students to kind of look at what the course content is, what individual modules are being offered by the university, not only in terms of what is compulsory for the student to study, but also in terms of what are the optional modules and electives that the university offers. So for example, I studied law. There were several law topics that I had to take, such as contract and tort, criminal law, EU law, but there were several optional modules that I was offered as well. And those ranged from competition law, intellectual property law, even Islamic law and human rights law. So if a student has a particular interest in a niche subject within the umbrella that they are applying for, then it is important that they look at the course content to see, does my university offer this or not? If students are doing a STEM subject, it is important to see, does the university give them research opportunities? How hands-on or experiential learning is involved versus how much of it is theoretical learning. So these are things that, students should also keep in mind when they're choosing not only the course that they want to apply to, but at which university the course is being provided. In terms of choosing the right university itself, I mean, location is extremely important. There are a lot of students, especially from India, who are not okay being in a remote campus somewhere. They prefer a big city, faster pace of living. So that is something to keep in mind. But then there are other students who also come and say, oh, but I'm going to university. I want a campus experience. I don't want to be in a city where all the buildings are, spread far apart. The dorms are far apart. Nobody is living together. It doesn't really give the campus feel. So that also kind of informs the campus culture and the university culture that will be present as well. So please keep that in mind. Of course, another thing to consider is tuition fees and living costs. It is more expensive to be in a big city like London in terms of both the tuition and living costs as well. So keep in mind those things. As I mentioned before, you have to check the minimum entry requirements for each course. As well. Generally speaking, we tell our students that if you are not meeting the minimum entry requirements of the course, do not apply there, because it is very likely that you will be rejected straight away. From the 5 courses that we do tell our students to apply to, we ask them to look at 1 or 2 where they're meeting the entry requirements. 1 or 2 of the university choices should be 1 or 2 points below what their predicted grades are, and 1 should be a true safety. The 5th choice should be something that is at least 3 to 4 points below the their current performance in the IB, because that is a safe margin by which to make that choice in case the final IB exams don't go as planned. I don't know if several of you are aware, but this year a lot of IB students did miss their offers because of the inflation that had happened in the grades because of COVID. They corrected that in the IB marking system this year, and a lot of students missed their offers. So please do keep that in mind. Having said that, it's also important that the safety that the student is applying to is one that they would be content going to in case they miss their firm offer. Okay. Another thing that I should clarify is that if the student is applying to 5 universities, and let's say, for example, they receive offers from all 5 of them, at the end, they're not allowed to keep 5 offers in hand. They are only allowed to keep 2. One of them becomes their top choice, which is called the firm. And the second one is called their insurance choice, which is their safety. So the other 3 offers have to be rejected by the student in order to make this decision of choosing 1 firm and 1 insurance. Any questions? Okay. So yes, these are the important components. As I mentioned, the first hurdle is the minimum entry requirements. Then comes the personal statement. So this is the statement of purpose. It's, a 4,000 character, approximately 1 page on a Word document essay outlining why the student wants to apply for the course that they want to apply to, how they have the relevant skills necessary to succeed in that endeavor. Then third requirement is references, which is the letter of recommendation, which again comes from the school. I always tell my students it's really important as soon as they know where they're studying and what they would like to study to start building a rapport with their counselor. If they don't have one already, start visiting them once a week, once every 2 weeks, because it is important to have a strong letter of recommendation as well. And the fourth requirement is the English proficiency test. So it is, most of the universities do want to see that a proof of English proficiency. You will hear that some universities are waiving this component if, for example, the student has been in an English instruction school for at least a minimum of 4 years, including high school years. However, TRP's policy is that as a safety, we tell all our students, take the English proficiency test, because you never know, certain universities may not waive this requirement. And also for visa purposes, it's really important to have a good English proficiency score. Okay, so this is an example of minimum entry requirements. I don't know from all the participants how many students here are doing A levels, how many are doing the IB, and how many are doing, for example, an Indian board, CBSE, ICSE. So you will see this is the minimum entry requirements for economics at UCL. So you will see on when you do the research through UCAS or you go to the university website itself, it will very clearly indicate what the minimum entry requirements are. So as you can see with the A levels, they require an A star AA, but not only do they want an A star AA, the A star has to be in mathematics. Okay. And then if economics is one of the subjects, then that has to be an A as well, which is a given if the requirement is an A star AA. For the IB, you will see that it's 39 points overall. This is out of 45, the total IB points, and not out of 42. It includes TOK and extended essay. And because it does, a lot of universities like to make this bifurcation where they say that the higher level subjects have to be a certain amount as well. So in this case, they're saying that we want a total of 19 points in 3 higher level subjects, including a grade 7 in maths. And if they're taking economics, a grade 6 in economics as well, with a score, with none of the scores being lower than 5. So these are very specific entry requirements that they have. Now, let's say UCL is going to make an offer. The offer is going to be very much aligned to these conditions. And if the student misses it, even if a student is to get 40 points overall, but misses the 19 points in the higher level subjects, there is a chance that the university will rescind the offer. Okay, you can see the entry requirements similarly for the Indian board as well. You can see over here, they have to either have completed a bachelor's degree at an Indian university, or if they're still studying in school, then they need to have at least 5 subjects at 95%. So 3 subjects at 95% and 2 subjects at 90%. When it comes to the personal statement, I mean, as the students progress to the with TRP at undergraduate, we help you write the personal statement. One thing to keep in mind is the personal statement is one essay that goes to all 5 of the universities that the student chooses to apply to. What this means is that it has to be a general personal statement, not specific to the university that they're applying to. And what we tell our students is that you should not be applying for completely different subjects at each university. So you should not be applying for engineering in one place and applying for history in another, because it is the same personal statement that kind of needs to address the motivation the student has behind that subject that they want to study. Okay, so it is okay. Yes, someone has a question. No? Okay, so it is okay, for example, for a student to say they want to do biochemistry in one place and just biology in another place. That is still closely related. So that is, again, not an ideal situation, but it is okay to do that as long as it is within the same field in general. It is also okay, for example, to study business and marketing in one university and only business management in another, or only marketing in the third, as long as you address the interest in the statement that the student is interested in studying business as well as marketing. The English proficiency tests that are available are the IELTS, TOEFL, and Duolingo. Generally, for the UK, we do say that the IELTS is the safest bet. So that is something to keep in mind. And as I mentioned before, when it comes to the letters of recommendation, it is important that the letter of recommendation attests to the academic performance of the child, the skills and qualities that they have, whether it's leadership skills, if they're a team player, if they're very, they engage in the community around them. They have what relevant ECAs, extracurricular activities that they have, and their suitability for the course. It should confirm and complement the information provided elsewhere in the application. So a lot of schools will send out what's called a brag sheet for the students to fill out. And so it's very important that students fill this out very thoroughly to ensure that whatever the student may be doing outside of school that the school is not aware of is included in that letter, so that the counselor can mention it in their letter of recommendation as well, where it is appropriate and relevant, right? So that kind of is proof. A lot of parents often come and ask me, oh, we can get a certificate for this, we can get another external letter of recommendation, but none of that is required for the application process. They do not ask for proof of any of these things. The proof will come in the form of your referee letter confirming what you are writing in your personal statement. Okay, so as I also mentioned, university decisions. So after you have received an application, you will either most likely you will receive the second option, which is a conditional offer. It is very unlikely that they will place you on alternative course. In some cases, we have seen that happen, where especially for art and design and fashion, if a student is applying for art and the university deems that their portfolio is not strong enough, they will make an offer that, okay, we're willing to have you, but why don't you join our foundation course instead? And a foundation year course is one that kind of allows the student to make up for the skills that they're lacking for the undergraduate degree in question. So I had a friend, for example, when I was at Warwick myself, who had also done a foundation course because she was missing the math grades that were requirement to do to apply to get into Warwick for business. So she did the foundation course, she made up for the math requirements, and then she started the next year doing undergraduate business at Warwick. When you do a foundation course at any university, there is no obligation to kind of stay at that university. You can pass a foundation and then do an undergraduate application to other universities if that is what you want. However, I will say that if you are doing a foundation at a certain university, it's much more seamless and almost a guarantee that the university with which you have done the foundation will accept you, provided you've passed the foundation. Some universities do sometimes call students in for an interview. Imperial, Oxford, Cambridge are the ones that come to mind. I myself, many years ago, was called for an interview at Kent University as well. So that is something to keep in mind. And where it's relevant, so for art fields, for architecture, a portfolio may be asked as well. And the admissions test, again, is most commonly seen in Oxford and Cambridge, which I will get to in a couple of slides as well, or right away. So before I move on to the Oxbridge applications, are there any questions?
Hi, I have a question.
Yes, Deepa?
So, the results of the IB come sometime in June, July, right? Around June.
July.
So, if a uni has given a conditional offer to a student,
yes,
and the term for the college starts in August, September, how does a student decide where to go? Because if the student, say, has applied to the US as well, they have to communicate their decisions to the other universities, I think by May, right?
Yes, correct.
How does that conflict kind of resolve?
So it ideally through the application process itself often helps students identify which university is a better fit for them. Okay, so I had a student this year, she was from Kenya. Can you hear me? I think someone's not on mute. So she was from Kenya and she applied to the UK as well as the US. Okay. And as we went forward with the UK application, and as she started looking through the course content of the courses, she applied for politics, philosophy, and economics in the UK, and she applied for economics and international relations in the US. As she went along, she realized that the UK is way too theoretical for her, that it was way too academic focused. It was not enough, holistic thinking. There was no core curriculum. And she then decided that the UK was not eventually the right fit for her. So in a case where a student is still confused, one way around it is that the student places the deposit on the before the 1st of May for their US choice, and then they wait for the IB results in July. But if they decide then to go for a UK university, they will lose the deposit at the US university. So that is the risk that you can take if the student is truly still undecided between the two destinations.
Okay, thank you
Does
so
that
much.
answer your question?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you so much.
Okay, all right. So I'm not going to go too much into detail into the Oxbridge application process. I mean, the students can come to this eventually, but I will say in general, as I'd mentioned earlier, the application deadline is a lot sooner. It's on the 16th of October. The reason for this is because in December, the students are then required to do an entrance test, depending on what major that they're applying for, and are often called in for an interview and assessment in December as well. This usually happens around the second week of December. And once this happens, Oxford and Cambridge applicants usually hear back by January whether they've gotten an offer or not. Okay, so again, so you can see that this is Oxford and Cambridge, 16th of October is the deadline. The rest of the application components are the same, the letter of recommendation, the personal statement as well. The tests will change. So, you know, a BMAT is important for medicine, LNAT is required for law, MAT is the mathematical aptitude test, etc. The same tests kind of apply to the University of Cambridge, like ENGA, for example, is what they require students who want to do computer science, engineering. Cambridge also has an additional form called the SAQ, which, you know, the TRP consultant can help you fill out as well. As I mentioned, the interviews happen sometime in the first 2 weeks of December if they are shortlisted. So it's not a guarantee that all students will receive an interview. And then you receive the decision before the end of January. Okay, so let's talk broadly about the advantages of choosing the UK. So of course, you know, it's very well-renowned universities. Tripti, do you mind, please, if you could mute yourself? Thank you. So high quality of education, very well, you know, world-renowned universities. Any university you go to, you apply for a job anywhere else in the world, it's very likely that they will have heard of the university that you have graduated from. There are several diverse course choices as well. You will get cultural diversity. I mean, the UK sees students from all over the world every year. And I would only say that the slight change that I have seen is that because of Brexit, a lot of European students are not so easily able to afford studying in the UK anymore. But I don't think that has affected the number of international applicants overall, because I think they're just taking more applicants from elsewhere, you know, from Africa, from Asia, from North and South America as well. There is a shorter duration, so that is a big advantage. In the US, most undergraduate degrees take a minimum of 4 years, versus in the UK, you're usually done in 3 years. And a lot of UK universities offer an integrated master's course as well, which then overall takes the student 4 years to do an undergraduate degree and a master's all in one, which is typically 1 year long. There are several research opportunities to engage in, you know, with cutting edge projects as well. And a big advantage is what has changed is that international students can stay back in the UK for a period of 2 years through a post-study work visa to kind of find a job. So 2 years is a long time and a huge benefit of why you would be in the UK. There is also, of course, a very, you know, a competitive job market as well, but it's very robust. They are constantly recruiting, hiring. So several opportunities in different sectors in the UK when it comes to looking for a job. Some of the disadvantages is, of course, that, you know, admissions to the top universities is very competitive. So often it, you know, and very academic focused as well. So often it doesn't matter if a student has been, you know, head girl at their school, or if they have, you know, done a lot of community service or volunteering, or an athlete, you know, unless they're applying to a sports specific course or to a university like Loughborough, which recruits athletes, it doesn't really make a huge difference to the competitiveness of the application. So it is more just about your grades and how the student has performed since 10th grade onwards. As I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation today, there is no flexibility to change the major, which is again a huge disadvantage. The weather in the UK is generally cold, rainy, gloomy. So no matter where you go in the UK, it's going to be the same. The job market can indeed be very competitive. And of course, the cost in, tuition of living in the UK can be high, especially in the big cities like London. And it is cheaper than the US, but of course not cheaper if you were to go somewhere else in continental Europe. So we've got an annual cost of attendance sort of rough calculation. Of course, this will differ depending on the lifestyle of the student themselves and how much, for example, that they're eating out, how much they're spending on entertainment, are they getting a part-time student job or not. Roughly, in the UK, it is going to cost around 25 to 58 lakhs a year, tuition and living costs included. You can see that this number is a lot higher for the US and for Canada as well. India is probably the cheapest, and then Europe comes somewhere in between there. Okay, so I just have a case study for you as well. So this is a student that applied for chemical engineering. These were some of the universities that they applied to. So Cambridge, Imperial, Manchester, was a very competitive, strong student, high grades, high extracurricular activities. You will see that, in Cambridge, they applied for chemical engineering via the natural science option, and then chemical engineering everywhere else. And you will also see that in most cases, the actual offer matched the minimum entry requirements that were listed on the website. So in fact, for Cambridge, where it's at 40 to 42 points with 776 at higher level, when the actual offer came in, it came at 43 points with 777 and higher level. So it is a possibility that the actual offer that comes in may be higher than the minimum required that they show. This is another case study of an ISC curriculum. The major was accounting and finance. They applied for accounting and finance everywhere, but the student was average. And again, you will see that minimum entry requirements were around 85% in all 5 subjects. Leeds, for example, had 85% overall, but at least 70% or higher in English and math. So you have to keep that in mind as well. When the offer from Leeds came, for example, it's at 85% overall, but 85% in math. So not only was it far from 70, it is actually a specific requirement of 85% or higher in mathematics. So these are some of the things to keep in mind as well. Yes, Dipali, the UK does have several very competitive universities for computer science, and these include Oxford, Cambridge, Imperial. Sheffield is very, very well known, has one of the best computer science departments in the UK as well. They're the top 5. So yeah, to answer your question, yes. Okay, so that concludes the presentation. So if anyone has any further questions, you may ask me now. Okay, Nanika, I think.
So I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Yes, Carl?
So what I understand is in US, if you've taken STEM subjects, then you get the chance to live for another 1 year or so. In UK, you mentioned it is 2 years after graduation. Is it agnostic of the subjects you take, or are there preference of subjects?
No, it doesn't matter what you've studied, but as you correctly said, in the US, it is based on whether the major that you go for has a STEM designation. If it has a STEM designation by the government, then you get an OPT that allows you to stay on for 2 more years in the US. So very often a humanities subject, liberal arts, those kind of subjects will not have a STEM designation, and then the student cannot stay on to look for a job. But in the UK, it is a general 2-year grace period that is offered.
Understood. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So Nandini, to answer your question, so generally speaking, when we're looking at STEM and you're looking at the competitive universities, it is the top 3 that come to mind will always be Oxford, Cambridge, and Imperial. But UCL is, of course, is very high as well. So we can help you with a college list with pure physics and space sciences. That's fine. Most of the universities will offer this. So yes, we can help share a list of colleges for medicine in the UK and in Northern Ireland, but in Ireland as well. Ireland has several good universities like RCSI, which is the Royal College of Surgeons, Trinity College, off the top of my head, they all offer medicine as well. So Sanvi's question is, for applying to LSE in the course of economics, what are the minimum entry requirements? The minimum entry requirements will include a requirement in math. I don't know what board, Sanvi, you're asking me for. So it will depend on the board, but math is a requirement. Higher level math is a requirement for LSE. For computer science, for ISC, what would a student need in requirements? 90-95% PCM. Yes, so Shalini, again, I don't have all the specific minimum entry requirements offhand. Nenika can put you in touch with a consultant that can help you with a specific list and curate that for you based on your child's subjects and on their preferences as well. Of course, when you look at the more competitive universities, it will be 95% or higher. 90% or higher in PCM is very likely to be asked for as well. But not necessarily both physics and chemistry are required. So it really does depend on the subject. Math will 100% be required as well. If you are looking at the most competitive schools, the best 3 subjects to have is indeed PCM. Can you combine majors and minors interdisciplinary? No, in the UK, you generally cannot combine majors. There are no such things as minors. So if you are applying for a joint honors degree, like for example, I studied law and business, then yes, I got a BA and LLB in law and business as a joint degree, but I cannot have done law and then minored in anthropology. That doesn't exist in the UK.
Yeah, I just wanted to pipe in there as well. So in the UK, if you can, of course, you know, if you're applying for something like a PPE, or if you're applying for a combination degree directly, then that's the only way you can study two separate subject areas. Else, if you're doing a particular subject, for example, I studied business in the UK and all my subjects were only around business. So you only have like a corporate strategy, economics, accounts, finance, math, but just subjects related to that area. So just unlike the US, you don't have that option to do to add a major at college or to kind of add that minor. You typically study 1 or 2 or 3 areas depending on what you apply into. So you really do need to know what you want to study before you apply if you're looking at the UK, because you don't have that option to shift your major. You have to restart the entire course. And whereas entry requirements, there are specific entry requirements. The UK is very black and white. A lot of it is on their website itself. Your consultant will kind of, you know, over the course of time, share college options with you that would make sense if you're considering the UK, keeping in mind your scores. More of the competitive schools and competitive majors like a computer science do require typically physics, chem, math. It differs college to college in terms of, you know, do they want, you know, a 7 in physics? Do they want, you know, a 6 in chemistry if you're doing the IB, or if you're doing a CBSE board, for example? Are they looking for 95% in math and 93% in chemistry? And, you know, so there are different kind of combinations, but of course the competitive schools are looking at 90 plus, whereas the CBSE, ISC, HSC is concerned. And whereas the IB or A levels, again, they are looking at your 7s and 6s as well for the top schools. But there are about more than 150-200 schools in the UK. So there are a lot of options. They have programs in all the different areas that you guys kind of mentioned on the chat. There's computer science, there's design, there's medicine, there's law, there's business. There's even more niche majors that, you know, we work with students who've gone and studied you know, topics such as sports science, or students that have kind of, you know, gone and done music business. So there are these specific majors as well that are a lot narrower for students that are very kind of concentrated and sure of what particular major they might want to study if it's not something broad.
Yeah, I wanted to know that, could you tell us more about design colleges in UK?
Yeah. So there are design colleges in the UK. Again, one of the ones that I visited very recently was Central St. Martin's in the UK. There are a couple under UAL. A lot of the other schools also, a lot of the other schools as well do offer design. Again, the course syllabus is very very specific to design, the application process, just like it is for all majors. Your personal statement really needs to kind of focus on the particular area that you're applying into, be it computer science, be it design. It's a lot more academic in nature than the US. 80 to 90% of kind of what they're looking at is your scores, very black and white, like the UK, so like India. So your scores and then your personal statement typically needs to be about the major. And in terms of courses, of course, I'll have to share entry requirements with each of you individually, depending on your particular child. But yeah, typically there are specific entry requirements for each of the different schools. Couple of them may require you to add something additional. Very rarely, typically it's just this much is typically enough, because in addition to kind of the letters of recommendation from school, your transcripts, and your personal statement, besides Oxbridge, that's typically all that the process entails. Sports science, Nandini, I don't remember the university specific.
Answered it in the chat, Nanika. So universities like Loughborough, Portsmouth, UCLan, they will offer sports science, they'll offer sports management, they'll offer several sports related courses as well. With regards to Tripti's question about A-level, IB is more preferred than CBSE, generally speaking, yes, the A-level and IB is considered to be more rigorous than the CBSE board. But having said that, the majority of UK universities do accept the CBSE board, but notably, for example, Cambridge does not. So the University of Cambridge does not find it to be sufficient preparation for entry into their university, and to overcome that, they have requirements like a student needs to do 5 AP classes and get all 5 in the AP classes in order to be considered. So yes, so like I said, the majority do accept CBSE board, so that is not something that you should be worried about or consider as, oh my God, my child is doing CBSE, what am I going to do? There are still many competitive universities in the UK that will accept the CBSE board. A computer science degree requires 2 sciences compulsorily besides math and IB. Well, no, not necessarily, but they do definitely like to see at least a physics or chemistry with maths. And I believe I have answered everyone's questions up till now. Anyone has any other questions?
I have one more.
Yeah.
If a child has taken a combination of PCM and economics in A levels, and if she wants to apply for certain undergrad course in UK, I understand that she cannot change it, but the subjects have to be mirroring what she studied in AS. For example, can she pick up, say, business law or something if she had to?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, go for it, Shraddha.
So if she's doing PCM and economics and she wants to study law and business, all the skills gained in a physics or math will kind of support her towards the business interest as well. But with regards to law, then it's really the extracurriculars that kind of need to demonstrate and showcase that interest towards law in order for her to write about it in her personal statement and then to be given consideration to study law at university.
Okay, I mean, that was just an example, but my main point was that maybe it's just the way it happens in India. So your undergrad courses perhaps have to, in a way, mirror or look like what you've done in 12th. Is that how UK sees it?
It does in certain subjects. Like I said, like for economics, if a student has not taken the commerce stream in CBSE, for example, and they've done something else and they're missing math, they will not be able to do economics in most of the universities. Right. So in that way, yes, it does need to mirror it. Of course, English, history, those sort of writing subjects are preferred for law. So that is important. Again, if they're doing engineering, PCM is extremely important. So in a way, yes, it does have to mirror it, but there are ways out of it. If there aren't any specific requirements for the major that they're then looking for. If they're applying for art or fashion, a portfolio is required. So they may not be studying it in school, but they need to have developed an art portfolio to submit for consideration, right? So those things are very important. If they want to do architecture, again, maths is very important. They need to have higher level maths as well as a portfolio.
Got it. Thank you.
Also, like, yeah, again, if they have those subjects and all of a sudden they want to study biology and they've not studied biology in 2 years, that is raising questions as to, okay, why do they want to do biology now? Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
welcome. Okay, I think that answers everyone's questions, Nanika.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shraddha, for conducting this for such a wide audience. Any specific questions, any colleges, you want specific information about or want to know entry requirements about, you can get in touch with your consultant and they'll be able to take you through it. I will be sharing the recording of the entire week sessions. So yesterday's session on the US, today's session on the UK, and the following sessions on Canada, Europe, and Indian liberal arts schools all together next week. So all of you will have access to that. And yeah, see you tomorrow. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Shraddha.
Thanks, Nanika. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.